Welcome to Trench Diaries and welcome to another story. Today we are again diving below the waves quite literally into one of the most famous accounts of submarine warfare ever written, The Boat by Lothar-Günther Buchheim. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back, it's great to see you again. You know how it goes. I'll include timestamps so you can skip ahead to the book introduction if you'd like. And if you are new here, welcome aboard. This is Trench Diaries, where I read and discuss the stories, diaries and autobiographies of soldiers, airmen and sailors throughout human history. Full disclaimer, this channel isn't political. It is about people and their experiences written in their own words. These stories should be regarded as such and not be judged with the arrogance of hindsight or the static of ideology. Rather, they should be viewed as portraits into bygone days and into the minds of people who lived through troubled days and did things that they thought to be right at the time. The texts I read are either English editions or original German works I've translated and edited myself to make them accessible in this format. As always, I'll also share a bit of my own background, having served in the German army and being a captain of the reserve, and after each episode I'll talk about some of the interesting cultural and historical details mentioned in the story, German traditions, language and even cuisine. If that sounds like your kind of content, consider subscribing, liking and leaving a comment. I read every single one and try to reply whenever I can. I am also trying to reach the milestone of 10,000 subscribers this year, so I'd appreciate you helping me out in this endeavor. But for now, let's meet today's author. Lothar-Günther Buchheim was born in 1918 in Weimar, Germany, a man who lived through some of the most turbulent chapters of the 20th century. During the Second World War, he served, among other things, as a war correspondent embedded with the Kriegsmarine. In 1941, he joined famous submarine U-96 on its 7th patrol. During this patrol, the boat was originally ordered to patrol the waters near Newfoundland, but was later rerouted to attempt a breakthrough into the Mediterranean. However, it was badly damaged and had to return to base with only little success and just one ship sunk. After the war, Buchheim became an art collector, painter and author known for his outspoken, often controversial views. He was fiercely critical of both wartime leadership and post-war hypocrisy, and that honesty echoes throughout his work. The Boat, published in 1973, is technically a novel, but it reads with the vivid realism of a memoir. It tells the story of a young war correspondent aboard a German U-boat during the height of the Battle of the Atlantic. You'll experience the tension, claustrophobia, and routine terror of life beneath the waves, but also the endless waiting, sudden bursts of action, and the psychological toll on the crew. Now, right at the start, Buchheim claims that the protagonists do not represent real people, but we know now that this isn't true. So, when he refers to the old man of U-96, he is talking about Knight's Cross bearer Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock, one of the most successful U-boat captains of World War II, with close to 200,000 tons sunk or damaged to his name. Other names in the book have been slightly altered, and I will tell you the real names when possible or appropriate. The book itself became a worldwide success, especially after its 1981 film adaptation directed by Wolfgang Petersen, a film that's still considered one of the most accurate depictions of submarine warfare ever made and arguably one of the best war movies of all time. But with that success came controversy. Many veterans of the U-boat service accused Buchheim of betrayal, claiming his portrayal of the crew and officers was too cynical, that he had exaggerated the chaos and breakdown of discipline for dramatic effect. Buchheim, in turn, argued that he was simply telling the truth, that he wanted to strip away the romanticism and show the madness of war as it really was. Whether you agree with him or not, The Boat remains one of the most human and haunting portrayals of warfare ever written. A portrayal that's not just about submarines, but about isolation, fear, and endurance under impossible conditions within a fighting force that suffered an astonishing 75% casualty rate. Finally, be warned that this book describes life aboard a submarine where people, especially the enlisted men, talk very frank and free. As such, it is quite vulgar at times. So, grab a beverage of your choice, sit back and get ready to descend into the deep. I am your host Jay, this is Trench Diaries. Let's read The Boat. Roll the intro. Preface. From Germany, where it provoked an uproar of controversy and unprecedented public debate, comes this truly extraordinary novel about men at war, with a force, a breadth, a profound humanity that make it a book of the largest resonance. The Boat is the story of a U-boat and her crew by Lothar-Günther Buchheim, who served on one, who saw the worst, and who has remembered every detail with a blazing obsession. The time is the fall and winter of 1941, the turning point of the war for Germany, and U-boats are hunting British convoys in the Atlantic. From the very first moment, you are part of the shadowy, claustrophobic world of U-96, a Type 7 U-boat, the boat, and its crew, mere children of 18 or 19, its officers not much older, its commander an old man and rare survivor at 30. You too are imprisoned in their infernal yet appallingly flimsy machine designed for war, not for human beings. Forced to find some tiny space to call your own, between engines and motors, torpedoes, cables, pipes, and wiring, shivering in the same wet clothes, smelling the same stench, sharing each moment of their daily routine. You suffer the weeks of fruitless patrol, the hours of waiting in fear, the terrifying moments of actual attack, living hundreds of feet below the surface, where the boat itself acquires an almost human existence, where individuals are trapped within the walls of their memories, their sexual fantasies, their fears, where freedom is a forgotten word until it is safe for the boat to surface and the vast expanse of ocean is seen again, the most magnificent sight in the world. This is more than an adventure story, although it is filled with unbearable urgency and excitement. More than a novel about war at sea, although it records the brutal details of battles with torpedoes and depth charges, of attack and defense, escape and pursuit, of the sinking of ships and the many kinds of deaths of the men who served in them. Neither is it a propagandistic epic of martial heroism. It is the story of ordinary men in mortal danger, a celebration of human endurance that, in its compassion, its beauty, and its power, stands comparison with All Quiet on the Western Front. Acclaimed and reviled for its devastating candor about Germany's fighting men, this is a supreme novel about World War II by a man on the other side. Author's Foreword. This book is a novel, but not a work of fiction. The author witnessed all the events reported in it. They are the sum of his experiences aboard U-boats. Nevertheless, the description of the characters who take part are not portraits of real persons living or dead. The operations that form the subject of the book took place primarily in the fall and winter of 1941. At that time, the turning point was becoming apparent in all the theaters of the war. Before Moscow, the troops of the Wehrmacht, only a few weeks after the Battle of Encirclement at Kiev, were brought to a standstill for the first time. In North Africa, the British troops went on the offensive. The United States was providing supplies for the Soviet Union and itself became immediately after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor a nation at war. Of the 40,000 German U-boat men in World War II, 30,000 did not return. Chapter 1. Bar Royal. From the officer's billet in the Hotel Majestic to the Bar Royal, the coast road describes a single extended curve 3 miles long. The moon is not yet up, but you can make out a pale ribbon of a road. The commander has the accelerator all the way down, as if this were a race. Suddenly, he has to brake. The tires scream. Brake, release, brake again fast. The old man handles it well, and without skidding, the heavy car comes to a stop in front of a wildly gesticulating figure. Blue uniform, petty officer's cap, what insignia on his sleeve? He's a U-boat man. He's standing just outside the beam of our headlight, waving his arms, his face in darkness. The commander is about to start forward slowly, when the man begins to beat with the palms of his hands on the radiator hood, bellowing, "You bright-eyed little fawn, I'll get you. I'll break your little heart in two." A pause, more fierce drumming on the hood and more bellowing. The commander's face is grim. He's about to explode, but no, he shifts into reverse. The car leaps, and I nearly crack my head on the windshield. Low gear, slalom curve, screeching tires, second gear. That was our number 1, the commander informs me, tight as a tick. The chief engineer, sitting behind us, swears unintelligibly. The commander has barely gotten up speed when he has to brake again, but he has a little more warning this time because the swaying line caught in our headlights is still some way ahead. At least 10 men straight across the road, all sailors in shore uniform. Flies open, cocks out, a single cascade of urine. The old man sounds the horn. The line parts and we drive between 2 rows of men pissing at attention. We call that the watering cart. They're all from our boat. Behind us, the chief growls. The rest are in the whorehouse, the commander says. They'll be doing rush business there tonight. You know Merkel is moving out in the morning as well. For almost a mile, not a soul to be seen. Then, in our headlights, a double file of military police. Let's hope none of our boys are missing in the morning, says the voice from behind us. When they are drunk, they like to go after the shore patrols. They don't even recognize their own commander, the old man mutters to himself. That's going too far. He's driving slower now. I'm not feeling so fresh myself, he says half over his shoulder. Too much ceremony for one day. First, the funeral this morning for that bosun who caught it in the air attack at Châteauneuf. And in the middle of the funeral, another attack. Terrific fireworks, I tell you. It isn't decent, particularly during a funeral. But our flag brought down 3 bombers. And what else? I asked the old man. Nothing today, but that execution yesterday turned my stomach. Desertion, clear case, a diesel engineer, 19 years old. Let's not talk about it. And then in the afternoon, that hog slaughter at the Majestic. Probably meant to be a banquet. Pudding broth or whatever the stuff's called, nobody liked it. The old man stops in front of the établissement. On the garden wall, a sign in letters 3 feet high proclaims Bar Royal. It is a creation in concrete, shaped like a ship, between the shore road and a secondary road coming in at a sharp angle from the pine forest. Straight across the front, on the ship's bridge, a picture window, like a great superstructure. Monique is the entertainer in the Bar Royal, a girl from Alsace who knows only scraps of German. Black hair, dark eyes, all temperament and tits. Besides Monique, the attractions are 3 waitresses with peekaboo blouses and a 3-man band, nervous and insipid, except for the drummer, a mulatto, who seems to enjoy what he's doing. The Tod organization had requisitioned the place and had it repainted. Now it is a mixture of Fin du siècle and German House of Art. The mural above the orchestra platform represents the 5 senses of the graces. 5 graces, 3 graces, who knows? The U-boat commander-in-chief took the place away from the Tod organization on the grounds that U-boat soldiers need relaxation, U-boat officers can't spend all their time in whorehouses, and we need a more refined atmosphere for our men. The more refined atmosphere consists of tattered carpets, split leather chairs, white latticework adorned with artificial grapevines on the walls, red shades on the wall lights, and faded red silk curtains over the windows. The commander looks around the room with a grin, stares magisterially at the groups at various tables, his chin pulled back and his forehead furrowed. He then methodically straightens a chair, lets himself drop heavily into it, and stretches his legs out in front. The waitress, Clementine, immediately comes tripping up to him, breasts bobbing. The old man orders beer all around. Before it arrives, the door bursts open and a group of 5 men crowds in, all lieutenant commanders by the stripes on their sleeves, and behind them 3 lieutenants and a 2nd lieutenant. 3 of the lieutenant commanders are wearing white caps, U-boat officers. Against the light, I recognize Flossmann, an unpleasant, irascible individual, square-built and blonde, who recently boasted that during his last patrol, in the course of an artillery attack on an unescorted vessel, the first thing he had done was to open fire on the lifeboats with a machine gun to make our position clear, as he said. The other 2 are Kupsch and Stackmann, the inseparables, who were heading home on leave when they got stuck in Paris and since then have been overflowing with whorehouse talk. The old man growls. Another hour and the whole U-force will be here. I've been wondering for a long time why the Tommies haven't smashed this shop in one of their dashing commando raids, along with the commander-in-chief in his little castle at Carneval. Can't understand why that shop hasn't been taken, so close to the water and right next to all that mess around for Louis. As for us sitting here, they could take us with a lasso if they wanted to. This would be a good night for it. The old man has neither the thin thoroughbred face nor the wiry figure of the picture book U-boat heroes. He looks rather ordinary, like the captain of a Hamburg America liner, and he moves heavily. The bridge of his nose is narrow in the middle, bends to the left and broadens out. His bright blue eyes are hiding under brows that are permanently frowning from so much concentrated staring at the sea. Usually, he keeps his eyes so nearly closed that you can only see two slits and, at their outer corners, a burst of wrinkles. His lower lip is full, his chin strongly modeled. By early afternoon, it is covered with reddish stubble. The rough, strong features give his face a look of gravity. Anyone not knowing his age would put him in his 40s. He's really 10 years younger. But given the average age of commanders, he is already an old man at 30. The commander is not given to grandiloquence. In his official reports, his accomplishments sound like child's play. It's hard to get anything out of him. Usually, we understand each other by an exchange of fragmentary phrases, tangential speech. A mere hint of irony, a slight pursing of the lips, and I know what he really means. When he praises U-boat headquarters, looking crosswise past me, it's clear what he means to convey. Our last night ashore. Beneath the babble of talk, always the nagging anxiety. Will it be all right? Will we make it? To calm myself, I reason it out. The old man, a first-class commander, unflappable, no slave driver, no crazy, bloodthirsty daredevil, reliable. He served on sailing ships before, has always come through. 200,000 tons, destroyed a whole harbor full of ships. Always got away, even out of the worst jams. My heavy sweater will be useful if we head north. I've told Simone not to come with me to the harbor. It would only cause trouble. The Gestapo idiots watch us like lynxes. Envious pigs they are. The Dönitz Volunteer Corps, they can't touch us. No notion where we are really headed. Mid-Atlantic probably. Not many U-boats out there, a very bad month. Strengthened defenses, the Tommies have learned a lot of new tricks. The tide has turned. The convoys are excellently guarded these days. Prien, Schepke, Kretschmer, Endras all attacked convoys, and they all got it at almost the same time, in March. For Schepke, it was especially nasty. Jammed between the periscope housing and the tower's armor plate when the destroyer rammed his bombed-out tub. The aces, there aren't many left. Endras's nerves were shot, but the old man is still intact. A model of perfect calm. Introverted, doesn't destroy himself with booze, seems completely relaxed as he sits there lost in thought. I have to leave for a minute. In the toilet, I hear two officers of the watch standing beside me at the yellow-stained tile wall. I have to go unload it. Don't stick it in the wrong place, you're really pissed. When the first one is already halfway through the door, the other roars after him. While you're at it, stuff in greetings and salutations from me too. Men from Merkel's boat, drunk, otherwise they wouldn't be spouting filth like that. I return to the table. Our chief engineer is angling for his glass. An entirely different man from the skipper. He looks like a Spaniard with his black eyes and pointed black beard, a portrait by El Greco. A nervous type, but he knows the ropes from A to Z. 27 years old. The commander's right hand, he has always sailed with the old man. They understand each other without much talk. Where's our second watch officer? The old man wants to know. On board, still on duty, but he'll probably turn up. Somebody has to do the work, after all. And the first watch officer? In the cat house, says the chief, grinning. Him in the cat house? Don't make me laugh. Probably writing his will. That's one man who always has everything in order. About the apprentice engineer who is going to be joining the crew on this voyage and is supposed to take over the chief's job afterward, the old man doesn't ask at all. So there will be 6 of us in the officers' mess, a lot of men at one small table. What's become of Thomsen? Asks the chief. He wouldn't just stand us up. Philipp Thomsen, a commander of the UF and very recent recipient of the Ritterkreuz, had reported in during the afternoon and told us about his exploits. Seated deep in a leather chair, elbows propped up, hands folded, as though in prayer, his eyes staring grimly over them at the opposite wall. He said, We were then harried for 3/4 of an hour by depth bombs. Right after the explosion, at a depth of about 200 feet, we took 6 to 8 canisters fairly close to the boat in a flat pattern. One was especially well placed, about the height of our gun and over 200 feet to one side, hard to be more precise. The others all fell 800 to 1,000 yards away. Then, an hour later, another series. That was in the evening, about 2300. At first, we stayed down and then make a silent run, rising slowly. After that, we surface behind the convoy. Next morning, a cruiser makes a dash in our direction. Wave force 3 and moderate wind. Rain squalls, rather cloudy, very favorable for surface attacks. We submerge and position ourselves for the attack. Fire, it goes wide. Then again, destroyer proceeding at slow speed. I make a try with the stern tube. That works. We then run behind the convoy until we receive orders to turn about. The second convoy announced by Zetschke. We maintain contact and supply running reports. Toward 1800 we catch up with it. Weather good, sea 2 to 3, fairly cloudy. Thomsen paused. It was very odd. All our successes were on days when one of the crew was having a birthday. Really extraordinary. The first time it was the diesel stokers. The second, a radio man's, and the unescorted ship went down on the cook's birthday and the destroyer on the torpedo technician's. Crazy, isn't it? Thomsen's boat had 4 pennants on its half-raised periscope when it ran in early this morning with the flood tide. 3 white ones for merchant vessels and a red one for the destroyer. Thomsen's hoarse voice rang out like the bark of a dog over the oil-covered brackish water. Both engines twice stop. The boat still had headway enough to glide noiselessly up to the pier. Its outlines were sharp. Out of the sticky, oily scum of the stinking harbor water, it rose like a tall vase with a much too tightly bunched bouquet in it. Not much color, a bunch of dried flowers. Blossoms like pale patches amid the dark moss of beards. As they approached, the patches became emaciated white faces, chalky skin, deeply shadowed hollow eyes. Some glittered as though with fever. Dirty, grey, salt-crusted leather clothes, mobs of hair under caps that were almost sliding off. Thomsen actually looked ill. Thin as a scarecrow, his cheeks cavernous. The grin on his face, certainly meant to be friendly, looked frozen. "Respectfully report UF back from action against the enemy," whereupon we "Heil UF" at full pitch. From Supply Depot 1, an echoing squawk and then another, weaker, from the Penhut wharf. The old man is wearing his oldest jacket to show his contempt for all the fancy dressers. The front of his ancient pea jacket has long since ceased to be blue and is more of a faded grey, filmed with dust and spots. The once golden buttons are green with verdigris. His dress shirt is also an indefinable color, lilac shading into blue-grey. The black, white, and red ribbon of his Ritterkreuz is no more than a twisted string. "This is not the old gang," the old man complains, casting an appraising glance over a circle of young watch officers at the center table. "These are the tadpoles, all booze and big talk." Lately, 2 groups have formed in the bar. The old warriors, as the old man's crewmates call themselves, and the young strutters. The philosophically oriented youngsters with faith in the Führer in their eyes, the chin thrusters, as the old man calls them, who practice intimidating looks in front of the mirror and clench their asses extra tight just because it's in style to move springily on the balls of the feet with buttocks held in and body inclined slightly forward. I stare at this assemblage of young heroes as though I were seeing them for the first time. Hairline mouths with sharp grooves on either side, rasping voices, swollen with their own superiority and crazy for medals. Not a thought in their head, but the Führer's eyes are upon you, our flag is dearer than life. 2 weeks ago in the Majestic, one of them shot himself because he'd caught syphilis. He gave his life for Volk und Vaterland, was, what they told, his fiancée. In addition to the crew of old warriors and young recruits, there is also the outsider Kügler, who sits with his first lieutenant close to the washroom door. Kügler of the oak leaves, who keeps aloof from everyone. Kügler, noble knight of the depths, Parsifal and torchbearer, unshakable believer in final victory. Steel blue eyes, proud bearing, not an ounce too much fat, an immaculate example of the master race. With tapered index fingers, he shuts his ears when he prefers not to hear cowardly misgivings or the sneers of doubting cynics. The flotilla surgeon occupies a neighboring table. He too has a special position. His brain is stuffed with a collection of the most astounding obscenities. Hence, he is known concisely as the filthy pig. 995 years of the 1,000-year Reich are already gone, in the opinion of the flotilla surgeon, an opinion broadcast whenever he sees fit or is drunk. At 30, the surgeon enjoys universal respect. On his third sortie against the enemy, he took over command and brought his boat back to base after the commander had been killed during a concentrated attack by 2 aircraft and both lieutenants lay badly wounded in their bunks. "Somebody die around here? What is this, a wake? What kind of place is this anyway?" "There's enough noise as it is," growls the old man, taking a quick swallow. Monique must have grasped what the surgeon was saying. She brings the microphone close to her scarred lips as though she means to lick it, flourishes a bundle of violet-colored ostrich feathers with her left hand, and bawls in the smoky voice, "J'attendrai le jour et la nuit." The drummer uses his brushes to evoke a sexy whisper from his silver-mounted drum. Shrieking, sobbing, moaning, Monique acts out the song with contortions, undulating her opulent, blue-white, shimmering breasts, valiantly exercising her derrière and performing a lot of hocus-pocus with the feather fan. She holds it behind her head like an Indian war bonnet and taps her pouting lips rapidly with the flat of her hand. Then she draws the fan up from behind and between her legs, le jour et la nuit, and rolls her eyes. Tender stroking of the feathers bumps and grinds towards the feather bush, drawn up again from below, hips swaying. She pouts again and blows on her fluttering prop. All at once she winks in the direction of the doorway, over the heads of the men around the tables. Aha! U-boat commander with his adjutant. This beanpole, topped by a diminutive schoolboy's face, is hardly worth more than a brief wink. He doesn't even give a smile of recognition, but glares around as if looking for another door to escape through unobserved. "A highly distinguished visitor come to consort with the mob," roars Truman, an especially recalcitrant member of the old guard, in the midst of Monique's sobbing. Carlos qui s'en fut. He actually staggers over to the commander-in-chief's chair. "Come on, you old Aztec, how about charging the front line? Come on, here's a good spot. Orchestra seat, the whole landscape from underneath. Not interested? Well, one man's meat is another man's." As usual, Truman is dead drunk. His spiky mop of black hair is covered with a drift of cigarette ash. 3 or 4 butts have become entangled in it, one still smoldering. He may burst into flames at any moment. He wears his Ritterkreuz back to front. Truman's boat is known as the Barrage Boat. Since his 5th patrol, his bad luck has become legendary. He's seldom at sea for more than a week. Crawling back on knees and nipples, as he calls it, has become a regular routine for him. Each time he's been caught during his approach to the theater of operations. Bombed by flyers, harried by death bombs, and there were always malfunctions, broken exhaust pipes, ruptured compressors, but no targets. Everyone in the flotilla is privately amazed that he and his men can bear up under their totally disastrous lack of success. The accordion player stares over his folded bellows as if he'd seen a vision. The mulatto is cut off somewhere around the level of his 3rd shirt button by the moon of his big drum. Either he's a dwarf or his stool is too low. Monique makes her roundest and most carp-like mouth and moans into the microphone. "In my solitude." And Truman leans closer and closer to her until he suddenly shouts, "Help! Poison!" and throws himself over backward. Monique falters. He thrashes about, then starts to get up again and bellows, "A real flamethrower. She must have eaten a whole string of garlic. Good God, oh God." Truman's chief, August Meyerhofer, appears. Since he wears the German cross on his jacket, he's known as August of the Fried Egg. "Well, how did it go in the whorehouse?" Truman yells at him. "Are you all fucked up? It's good for the complexion. Old Papa Truman certainly ought to know by now." At the next table, they are all bawling in chorus, "O du schöner Westerwald." The flotilla surgeon is leading the halting choir with a wine bottle. There is a big round table close to the podium which by tacit consent is reserved for the old guard. In the leather chairs around it only the old man's friends and contemporaries sit or sag, more or less drunkenly. Kupsch and Stackmann, the Siamese twins, Merkel the ancient, Kortmann the Indian, they are all prematurely grey, naval gladiators from the word go, who act nonchalant although they know better than anyone what their chances are. They can loll for hours at a time, almost motionless. On the other hand, they can't lift a glass without shaking. They all have more than half a dozen difficult missions behind them. They all have been through the worst kind of nervous tension, refined torture, hopeless situations that swung around to their advantage by some sheer miracle. Not one of them who hasn't come back with a wrecked boat against all expectation. Upper deck demolished by aircraft bombs, conning tower rammed in, stoved in bow, cracked pressure hull, but each time they did come back. They were standing bolt upright on the bridge, acting as though the whole mission had been a mere routine. To act as though everything were a matter of course is part of the code. Howling and chattering of teeth are not allowed. U-boat headquarters keeps the game going. For headquarters, anyone who still has a neck and a head and all four extremities attached to his torso is all right. For headquarters, you are certifiable only when you start to rave. They should long ago have sent out fresh, unscathed men to replace the old commanders in the frontline boats, but, alas, the unscathed novices with their unshaken nerves happen to be far less competent than the old commanders. And the latter make use of every conceivable trick to keep from parting with an experienced watch officer who is really ready to become a commander. Endras should never have been allowed to put to sea again in his condition. He was completely done in. But that's the way it goes. U-boat headquarters has been struck by blindness. They don't see when someone is on his last legs, or they don't want to see. After all, it's the old aces who brought in these successes, the contents of the little basket for special communiques. The combo takes a break. I can again hear fragments of conversation. Where is Kallmann? He certainly won't be coming. You can see why. Kallmann came in the day before yesterday with 3 victory pennants on his half-raised periscope, 3 steamers. He sank the last one, in shallow coastal waters, with his cannon. He said, "It took more than 100 rounds, I tell you. We had a heavy sea. With our boat hove to, we had to shoot at an angle of 45 degrees. We got the one before that at about 1900 in the twilight, an underwater shot. 2 hits on a 12,000 gross registered tons, 1 miss. Then they were after us, tin cans for 8 long hours. They probably used up everything they had on board." With his hollow cheeks and his wispy blonde beard, Kallmann looked like Jesus on the cross. He kept twisting his hands as if each word were being dragged out of him. We listened intently, disguising our uneasiness with an exaggerated show of interest. When would he finally ask the question we were dreading? When he had finished, he stopped twisting his hands and sat motionless, palms pressed together. And then, gazing past us over his fingertips, he asked with forced indifference, "What news of Bartel?" No answer. The commander-in-chief let his head nod frantically. So, well, I guessed it when there was no further radio contact. A minute of silence, then he asked urgently, "Doesn't anyone know anything at all?" "No." "Is there still a chance?" "No." Cigarette smoke hung motionless in front of their mouths. "We were together the whole time at dock. I ran out with him too," he said finally, helpless, embarrassed. It made you want to vomit. We all knew what close friends Kallmann and Bartel were. They always managed to put to sea together. They attacked the same convoys. Once, Kallmann had said, "It stiffens your spine if you know you're not alone." Bechtel comes through the swinging door. With his pale, pale hair, eyelashes and eyebrows he looks half scalded. When he is as pale as this, his freckles stand out. A big hello. He's surrounded by a group of the younger men. He has to stand them drinks because he's been reborn, as they say. Bechtel has gone through an experience that the old man described as really remarkable. After a fierce pursuit with death bombs and all sorts of damage to his ship, he surfaced in the grey of dawn to find a hissing canister lying in front of his cannon on the upper deck. He was caught between the corvette still in the neighborhood and a live bomb in front of the conning tower. It had been said to go off at a greater depth and so hadn't exploded when it fell on Bechtel's upper deck at 200 feet. He immediately ordered both diesels full speed ahead, and the bosun had to roll the depth charge overboard like a barrel of tar. It blew 25 seconds later, so it was set for 300 feet. And then he had to dive again and took 20 more depth charges. "I would certainly have brought that firecracker back with me," Merkel shouted. "We'd have liked to, only we couldn't stop that damned hissing. Simply couldn't find the button. Absolutely hilarious." The room is getting more and more crowded, but Thomsen is still missing. Where do you suppose he can be? Perhaps he's getting in one last quick one. In the shape he's in? With the Ritterkreuz around your neck, it must give you a whole new sensation, I guess. During the awarding of the Ritterkreuz by the Commander-in-Chief of the U-boats this afternoon, Thomsen had stood as rigid as an iron statue. He had such a grip on himself that there was practically no color in his face. In his condition, he could hardly have heard a word of the CNC's rousing speech. "He'd better look out or I'll eat that lousy cur of his," Truman had muttered at the time. "The bitch is there every time he reports in. We're not running a zoo here. Toy soldier," he now adds as the Commander-in-Chief withdraws after a manly handshake and a piercing glance. And, cynically to those in the circle, great wallpaper, pointing at the photographs of the dead on the 3 walls, one little black-framed picture after another. There beside the door, there's still space for a few more. Already I can see whose photo is going to appear next. Bechmann's. Bechmann should have been back long ago. The 3-star announcement is sure to be issued very soon. They took him off the Paris train, stinking drunk. It required 4 men to get him out. The express had to wait while they did it. You could have hung him over a clothesline, completely fucked out. Albino eyes, and that's the shape he was in 24 hours before putting to sea. How in God's name did the flotilla surgeon get him on his feet again? Probably an airplane caught him. Shortly after he cleared port, reports from him ceased. Hard to believe. The Tommies are coming in now as close as Channel Buoy Nanny 1. I'm reminded of Bode, the naval staff officer in Carnival, a solitary old man who used to get drunk all alone late at night in the wardroom. 30 boats had been lost in a single month. You could turn into a drunk if you drank to each of them. Flexig, heavy and uncouth, one of the old man's last crew, throws himself into the last empty chair at our table. He got back from Berlin a week ago. Since then, he's hardly said a word. But now he breaks out. "Do you know what this idiot monkey said to me, this dolled-up staff heiny? The right of commanders to wear white caps is not expressed in any of the regulations regarding uniforms. I said, I would respectfully suggest that the omission be rectified." Flexig takes a couple of powerful swigs of Martell from a tumbler and methodically wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. Erler, a young lieutenant who has completed his first patrol as commander, keeps opening the door so hard that it bangs against the doorstop. From his breast pocket dangles the end of a rose-colored slip. Back from leave just this morning, by afternoon he was in the Majestic, waxing eloquent about his experience. As he told it, they had held a torchlight parade for him back in his hometown. He could prove it all with clippings from the newspapers. There he stood on the Rathaus balcony, his right hand raised in a German salute. A German sea hero hailed in his hometown. "Well, he'll quiet down later on," mutters the old man. In Erler's wake come the radio commentator Kress, an oily, intrusive reporter with exaggerated idea of his own importance, and the former provincial orator, Marx, who now writes inflated, inspirational articles on endurance. They look like Laurel and Hardy in navy uniforms, the radio creature tall and lanky, the enduring Marx fat and knobbly. At their appearance, the old man gives an audible snort. The favorite word of the radio people is continuously. The continuously increased effort in munitions, victory statistics, will to attack. Everything must press on continuously. Erler plants himself in front of the old man and snappily invites him to a round of drinks. For quite a while, the old man does not react at all. Then he lays his head to one side as if for a shave and announces distinctly, "We always have time for a quick swig." I already know what comes next. In the middle of the room, Erler demonstrates his method of uncorking champagne bottles with a single sharp blow of the back of a knife against the bulge in the neck. He's great at it. The cork and the glass lip fly off without leaving a splinter, and the champagne shoots up as though from a foaming fire extinguisher. I am instantly reminded of an exercise of the Dresden Fire Department. In front of the opera house they had erected a steel mast with a swastika made of pipes in celebration of Reich Fire Prevention Day. Around the mast a herd of red fire wagons had been drawn up. The immense square was jammed with an expectant crowd. The command was barked down the loudspeaker, "Foam, forward march!" And out of the four ends of the swastika shot the foam. It began to rotate faster and faster, becoming a spouting windmill. The crowd went, "Oh!" and the foam gradually turned rosy, then red, then violet, then blue, then green, then yellow. The crowd applauded while an ankle-deep slime of aniline spread out in front of the opera house. Again, the door crashes open. It's Thomsen, at last. Half supported, half pushed by his officers, he staggers in, glassy-eyed. I quickly drag up a chair so that we can take him into our circle. Monique is singing, "Perhaps I am Napoleon, perhaps I am the king." I gather the wilted flowers from the table and strew them over Thomsen's head. Grinning, he allows himself to be adorned. "Where's the commander-in-chief hiding?" asks the old man. It's the first time we realize that the CNC has disappeared again before the real celebration has begun. Kügler is no longer here either. "Cowardly bastards," Truman growls, then rises laboriously and staggers off between the tables. He returns with a toilet brush in his hand. "What the hell's that thing for?" the old man bursts out. But Truman only staggers closer. He places himself in front of Thomsen with his left hand propped on our table, breathes deeply a couple of times, and at the top of his voice roars, "Silence in the cat house!" Instantly, the music stops. Truman moves the dripping toilet brush up and down right in front of Thomsen's face and babbles tearfully, "Our magnificent, esteemed, abstinent, and unwed Führer, who, in his glorious ascension from painter's apprentice to the greatest battle leader of all time..." Something wrong? Truman wallows for a few seconds in boozy emotion before going on to declaim, "The great naval expert, the unexcelled ocean strategist, to whom it has occurred in his infinite wisdom..." How does it go from there? Truman throws a questioning glance around the circle, belches deeply, and starts up again. "The great naval leader who showed that English bedwetter, that cigar-smoking, syphilitic..." What else has he dreamed up? Let's see. "Has shown that asshole of a Churchill just who knows which end is up." Truman lets himself sink back into his chair exhausted and blows his cognac breath straight into my face. In the bad light, he looks green. He continues. "We dub him Knight, we consecrate the new Knight, the shitty clown, and the shitty Churchill." Laurel and Hardy force their chairs into our circle. They are brown-nosing Thomsen, using his drunkenness to learn something about his last patrol. No one knows exactly why they spend their time trying to get interviews for their cliched articles, but Thomsen is long past the point of communication. He stares at the two almost idiotically and simply growls as they busily put words in his mouth. "Yes, exactly right. Blew up promptly as expected. Hit just beyond the bridge. Blue funnel steamer. Do you understand? No, not funny. Funnel." Kress feels that Thomsen is stringing him along and swallows dryly. Looks like a fool with his Adam's apple bobbing up and down. The old man is enjoying his embarrassment and wouldn't dream of helping him out. Thomsen is finally incapable of taking in anything at all. "Oh shit, shitty fish," he shouts. I know what that means. In the last few weeks there's been one torpedo failure after another. So many defects are no accident. There's been talk of sabotage. Suddenly, Thomsen springs to his feet, terror in his eyes. Glasses fall and break, the telephone has rung. He must have mistaken it for the alarm bell. "A can of pickled herring," he now demands, swaying heavily. "Pickled herring all around." I half hear fragments of what Merkel is reporting to his group behind me. The chief petty officer was good, first-class man. The diesel mechanic I've got to get rid of. He's at dead loss. The corvette was at position 0. The chief was slow in getting the lifeboat down. There was one man swimming around in the drink, looked like a seal. We ran up to him because we wanted to know the name of the ship, black with oil hanging onto a buoy. Erler has discovered that it makes a murderous noise if you run an empty wine bottle along the ribs of a radiator. 2, 3 bottles burst, but he doesn't give up. Scattered glass crunches underfoot. Monique throws him a furious look because she can hardly make her groans heard over the uproar. Merkel staggers to his feet and gives himself a thorough scratching between the legs through his trouser pocket. Now his chief engineer appears. This man is universally envied for his ability to produce a tune on 2 fingers. He can do anything, the fanciest whistling, commando signals, wild music, arabesques, tremulous fantasies. He's feeling expansive and immediately agrees to teach me. First, however, he has to go to the can. When he comes back, he says, "Get going, wash your paws." Why? If you're going to be difficult, okay, one hand will do. After I've washed, Merkel's chief thoroughly examines my right hand, then decisively pops my index finger and middle finger into his mouth and begins to whistle a couple of trial notes. Soon, a whole melody emerges, getting gradually shriller and sharper. He rolls his eyes as he plays. I'm stunned. 2 more cascades of sound and finish. I examine my wet fingers with respect. I must pay attention to the finger placement, says the chief. Good. Now I try it, but only extract a couple of honking noises and the sputter of a leaky pressure hose. Merkel's chief rewards my attempt with a despairing glance. Then, with an air of assumed innocence, he puts my fingers in his mouth again, and out comes the sound of a bassoon. We agree that it must have something to do with the tongue. Unfortunately, there's something you can't trade, says the old man. Youth without joy, Kortmann draws unexpectedly during a pause in the hubbub. Kortmann with his eagle's face, the Indian. At U-boat headquarters in Kernevelle, he's been in disgrace since the incident with the tanker Bismarck. Kortmann, the disobeyer of orders, rescuing German seamen, taking his boat out of action to do so, failing to follow orders out of sentimentality, could only happen to Kortmann, one of the old guard with the antiquated credo branded on his brain. Concern for the fate of the shipwrecked is the first duty of every seaman, he says. Much good it'll do him to roar old-fashioned Herr Kortmann, whom U-boat headquarters finds a little slow on the uptake and who has not yet noticed that requirements have become more rigorous. Of course, bad luck came into it as well. Did the English cruiser have to turn up just when Kortmann was securely connected by fuel hose to the tanker? The tanker had really been intended for Bismarck, but Bismarck didn't need any more fuel oil. The Bismarck was at the bottom of the ocean along with 2,500 men, and the tanker was wallowing along, full to the brim and with no takers. Then command decided the U-boats should suck it dry, and just as Kortmann was partaking, it happened. The Englishman shot the tanker away from under his nose, the 50-man crew was floundering in the drink, and warm-hearted Kortmann couldn't bring himself to let them go on floundering. Kortmann was still proud of his catch. 50 seamen on one Type 7C boat where there's hardly room for the crew. How he stowed them away is his secret, probably by the canned sardine method, head to toe and no unnecessary breathing. Good old Kortmann certainly thought he'd performed a miracle. Drunkenness begins to wipe out the boundary between the old warriors and the young strutters. They all try to talk at once. I hear Böhler reasoning. After all, there are guidelines, explicit guidelines, gentlemen. Orders. Perfectly clear orders. Guidelines, gentlemen, clear orders. Thomsen imitates him. Don't make me laugh. Nothing could be less clear. Thomsen glances up sideways at Böhler. Suddenly, he has a devilish gleam in his eye and is entirely aware of what's going on. Actually, it's all part of their plan, all this uncertainty. Sämisch sticks its carrot-colored head into the circle. He's already half smashed. In the murky light, the skin on his face looks like a plucked chicken's. Böhler begins to lecture the carrot head. Here's the way it is. In total war, the effect of our weapons can... Pure propaganda rubbish, Thomsen jeers. Let me finish, will you? Now take this as an example. A support cruiser fished a Tommy out of the drink who'd already been overboard 3 times. What does that imply for us? Are we carrying on a war or just a demolition campaign? What good is it if we sink their steamers and then let them fish out the survivors so they can just sign on again? Of course, there's a lot of money in it for them. Things are really hot now that Böhler has opened up the burning topic that is usually taboo. Destroy the enemy himself or merely his ships. That's neither here nor there, Sämisch insists. But here, Truman breaks in. Truman, the agitator, feels himself challenged, a thorny problem that everyone ducks, except Truman. Be a little systematic for once. U-boat headquarters gives orders: destroy the enemy with unswerving warlike spirit, with unfaltering severity, implacable effort, and so on, all that crap. But U-boat headquarters hasn't said a word about attacking men who are struggling in the water, am I right? So leather-faced Truman is wide enough awake to play provocateur. Thomsen immediately jumps in. Well, of course not. It has simply been made unmistakably clear that it is precisely the loss of crews that hits the enemy hardest. Truman looks sly and stokes the fire a little. So what? Thomsen, inflamed by the brandy, promptly protests. Then everyone has to decide for himself or what? Very smart. Now Truman really fans the flames. There's one person who solved the problem in his own way and makes no bones about it. Don't touch a hair off their heads, but shoot up the lifeboats. If the weather happens to help them sink fast, so much the better. That's that. The conventions have been respected. That's right, isn't it? U-boat headquarters can consider itself understood. Everyone knows who is meant, but no one looks at Flossmann. I suddenly have to think about the stuff I want to take with me. Only what's absolutely necessary. Certainly the heavy sweater. Cologne, razor blades, I can do without them. The whole thing's a farce, Thomsen again. As long as a man has a deck under his feet, you can shoot him down, but if the poor bugger is struggling in the water, your heart bleeds for him. Pretty ridiculous, isn't it? Truman starts up again. I want to explain what it really feels like. Yes, if it's only one man, you imagine it could be you. It's only natural, but no one can identify with a whole steamer. That doesn't strike home. But a single man, instantly it all looks different. That's getting uncomfortable. So they patch an ethic together and presto, everything's beautiful again. The heavy sweater that Simone knitted for me is terrific. Collar reaching to the middle of the ears, all done in cable stitch, and it's not an ass freezer either, but nice and long. Maybe we'll really go north, Denmark Road, or all the way up. The Russian convoys, lousy that no one has any idea. But the men in the water really are defenseless, Sämisch insists in a plaintive, righteous voice. It starts all over again. Thomsen gestures in resignation and murmurs, shit, and lets his head slump. I feel an urgent desire to get up and get out, to go pack my things properly. 1 or 2 books, but which ones? No more brandy for me. The atmosphere in here would flatten a prize fighter. I try to keep my head clear. Last night ashore, extra films, my wide-angle lens, the fur-lined cap, black cap and white sweater. I'll certainly look silly. The flotilla surgeon is supporting himself on outspread arms, one hand on my left shoulder, the other on the old man's right, as though about to perform on the parallel bars. The music has started up again. Over it, he roars at the top of his voice. Are we here for a Ritterkreuz celebration or a philosophy session? Cut the bullshit. The surgeon's bellow startles a couple of officers to their feet, and they immediately proceed as if on cue. They get up on chairs and pour beer into the piano, while a lieutenant commander pounds the keys like mad. One bottle after another. The piano swallows the beer unprotestingly. The combo and the piano don't make enough noise, so the phonograph is turned on at maximum volume. Where's the tiger? Where's the tiger? A tall blonde lieutenant rips off his jacket, leaps smoothly onto a squat onto the table, and starts flexing his stomach muscles. Ought to be on the stage. Fantastic. Cut it out, you're making me horny. During the frenetic applause, one man wraps himself up comfortably in the red runner on the floor, puts the life preserver on, which has been hanging as a decoration on the wall, around his neck, and goes right to sleep. Bechtel, hardly one of nature's exhibitionists, stares into space while clapping in time to a rumba that is demanding the utmost from the belly dancer. Our chief, who until now has been sitting silently, thinking, also gets out of hand. He climbs up the latticework attached to the wall above the platform and, imitating a monkey, plucks away at the artificial grapevine in time to the music. The lattice sways, remains standing for a moment 2 feet from the wall as in an old Buster Keaton film, then crashes down with the chief onto the platform. The piano player has his head bent way back as if he were trying to decipher some notes on the ceiling and bangs out a march. A group forms around the piano and bawls. "We'll march, 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 though heaven rains down crap. We're heading home to Slimeville from this asshole off the map." "Classy, virile, Teutonic," growls the old man. Truman stares at his glass and is galvanized. He springs to his feet and roars, "Skål!" From a good 6 inches above his mouth, he pours a stream of beer into himself, sending a broad flow of slobber down his jacket. A real orgy, I hear from Meinig, the dirtiest mouth in the flotilla. All that's missing is women. As though that were a signal, Merkel's number 1 and 2 get up and leave. Before reaching the door, they exchange meaningful glances. I thought they had already gone. "Whenever you're scared, go get laid," mutters the old man. From a neighboring table, I make out, whenever passion seized him, he'd leap up on the kitchen table and screw the hamburger. That's the way it always is. The Führer's noble knights, the people's radiant future, a few rounds of cognac washed down with some Beck's beer, and there goes our dream of spotless, shining armor. "Remarkable," says the old man, reaching for his glass. "This shit of a chair, I can't get up." "Ha!" comes from someone in the neighborhood circle. "That's what my girl says too. Can't get up again, can't get up again." The table is a wild mess of champagne bottles with broken necks, ashtrays swimming with butts, pickled herring cans, and shattered glasses. Truman glances thoughtfully at this rubbish heap. When the piano finally stops for a moment, he raises his right hand and roars, "Attention!" "The tablecloth trick," says our chief. Truman carefully twists one corner of the cloth like a rope. He takes a good 5 minutes because it gets away from him twice when it's half ready. Then, with his free left hand, he gives a signal to the piano player, who almost seems to have rehearsed the act, for he strikes a flourish on the keys. Truman settles his feet with the concentration of a weightlifter, stands perfectly still for a moment, staring at his 2 hands as they grip the twisted corner of the cloth, and suddenly, with a primitive war whoop and a mighty swing of the arms, he pulls the cloth halfway off the table. A jarring cascade of smashing glass, splintering crash of bottles and plates, falling to the floor. "Shit! Fucking shit!" he curses, and staggers crunching through the shattered glass. He steers uncertainly for the kitchen and bellows for a broom and shovel. Then, amid the mad laughter of the whole crowd, he crawls around between the tables and grimly clears up the litter, leaving a trail of blood behind him. The handles of the brush and the garbage shovel are immediately smeared with it. 2 lieutenants try to take the implements away from Truman, but he obstinately insists on gathering up every last splinter. "Clear up, everything must be first, be orderly, cleared up, always just right, shipshape." Finally, he lets himself down in his chair and the flotilla surgeon draws 3 or 4 splinters out of the balls of his thumbs. Blood continues to drip on the table. Then Truman rubs his bloody hands across his face. "Hell's teeth," says the old man. "Doesn't matter a shit," Truman roars, but allows the waitress to apply small adhesive bandages, which she brings with a reproachful look in her eyes. He has hardly been in his chair 5 minutes when he pulls himself to his feet again, yanks a crumpled newspaper out of his pocket and yells, "If you've nothing else to say, you boneheads here are some golden words." I see what he's holding. The will of Lieutenant Commander Mönckeberg, who died ostensibly in combat but actually lost his life in a completely unmilitary fashion, to wit, by breaking his neck. And his neck broke somewhere in the Atlantic in a smooth sea, simply because the weather was so fine and he wanted to go swimming. Just as he dived from the conning tower, the boat rolled in the opposite direction, and Mönckeberg cracked his head against the ballast tank. His manly swan song was printed in all the papers. Truman holds the clipping out at arm's length. "All alike, one for all for one, and so I say to you, comrades, only a unique determination to fight, the background of this dramatic battle of world historic significance, anonymous heroic courage, historic grandeur, wholly incomparable, standing alone, imperishable chapter of noble endurance and martial sacrifice, the highest ideal, those living now and those yet to come, to be fruitful, to prove oneself worthy of the eternal heritage. Still holding the sodden and illegible piece of paper, he sways back and forth, but he doesn't fall. His shoes seem stuck fast to the floor. "Crazy bugger," says the old man. "No one can stop him now." A lieutenant sits down at the piano and starts playing jazz, but this makes no difference to Truman. His voice cracks. "We comrades, standard bearers of the future, life and spirit of a human elite with the concept of service as the highest ideal, a shining example for those left behind, courage that outlives death, lonely resolve, calm acceptance of fate, endless daring, love and loyalty of such boundlessness as you rebel couldn't begin to conceive of, more precious than diamonds, endurance, jawohl, proud and manly, hurrah, finds his grave in the depths of the Atlantic. Ha! Deepest comradeship, battlefront and homeland, willingness to sacrifice for the utmost. Our beloved German people, our splendid God-sent Führer and Supreme Commander, Heil, Heil, Heil." Some of them join in. Böhler looks severely at Truman like a governess, pushes himself up out of his chair to his full height, and disappears without a word of farewell. You there, get away from my tit," Monique screams. She means the surgeon. Apparently, he has made himself too companionable. "Then I just crawl back inside my foreskin," he yawns, and the circle bursts into uproarious laughter. Truman collapses onto his chair and his eyelids droop. Maybe the old man was mistaken after all. He's going to pass out right in front of us. Then he leaps up as though bitten by a tarantula and with his right hand fishes a revolver out of his pocket. An officer near him has enough reflexes left to strike down Truman's arm. A shot hits the floor, just missing the old man's foot. He simply shakes his head and says, "Not even much of a bang with all this music going on." The pistol disappears and Truman sinks back in his chair, looking sullen. Monique, who has been slow to recognize the shot, springs out from behind the bar, sashays her way past Truman, stroking him under the chin as though she were soaping him for a shave, then leaps quickly onto the platform and moans into the microphone, "In my solitude." Out of the corner of my eye, I see Truman rise in slow motion. He seems to divide each movement into its individual components. He stands, grinning craftily and swaying for at least 5 minutes until Monique has finished her wailing. Then, during the frantic applause, he feels his way between the tables to the back wall, leans there a while, still grinning, and finally whips out a second pistol from his belt and shouts, "Everyone under the table!" so loud that the veins in his neck stand out. This time, no one is close enough to stop him. "Well?" The old man simply stretches his feet out in front of him and slides out of his chair. 3 or 4 others take cover behind the piano. The piano player has fallen to his knees. I too crouch on the floor in an attitude of prayer. Suddenly, there is dead silence in the room, and then one bang after another. The old man counts them aloud. Monique is under a table screaming in a high voice that cuts to the bone. The old man shouts, "That's it!" Truman has emptied his magazine. I peer over the edge of the table. The 5 ladies on the wall above the platform have lost their faces. Plaster is still trickling down. The old man is the first to get up and observe the damage, his head cocked to one side. Fantastic performance, rodeo standard, and all done with wounded fists. Truman has already kicked the pistol away and is grinning with delight from ear to ear. "About time, don't you think? About time those loyal German cows got it, eh?" He's almost delirious with self-satisfaction. Hands in the air, shrieking in a high falsetto as if afraid for her life, ready to surrender, enter the madam. When the old man sees her, he slides down out of his chair again. "Take cover!" someone roars. A miracle that this over-rigged old frigate, who functions as the hostess here, has taken till now to put in an appearance. She has dolled herself up Spanish fashion, spit curls plastered down in front of her ears, and a gleaming tortoise-shell comb in her hair, a wobbling monument with rolls of fat bulging out all over. She's wearing black silk slippers. There are rings with huge imitation stones on her sausage-like fingers. This monster enjoys the special favors of the garrison commander. Ordinarily, her voice sounds like bacon sizzling in the pan, but now she's yowling away in a string of curses. Kaputt, kaputt, I manage to distinguish in the general yammer. Kaputt. She's right about that, says the old man. Thomsen lifts a bottle to his mouth and sucks at the cognac as if from a nipple. Merkel saves the situation. He clambers onto a chair and vigorously begins to conduct a choir. Oh, thou blessed Christmastide. We all join in enthusiastically. The madam wrings her hands like a tragedienne. Her squeaks only occasionally cut through our performance. She looks ready to tear her spangled dress from her body, but then simply tears at her hair with her dark red lacquered nails instead, screeches and rushes off. Merkel falls from his chair and the chorus ebbs away. What a madhouse, Christ, what a racket, says the old man. In any case, I think I must take the warm body band along. Angora wool, first-rate stuff. The flotilla surgeon draws Monique onto his lap. He has hold of her rear end with his right hand and with his left is raising her right breast as if weighing a melon. The voluptuous Monique, straining in her scrap of a dress, shrieks, tears herself loose and collides with the phonograph so that the needle shoots across the grooves with a dull, groaning thud. She's giggling hysterically. The surgeon pounds the table with his fists until the bottles jump and turns red as a turkey cock with repressed laughter. Someone puts both arms around his neck from behind to embrace him, but when the hands disappear, the surgeon's tie is cut short directly under the knot and he doesn't even notice. The lieutenant with the shares has already chopped off Sämisch's tie, and then Thomsen's, and Monique, watching all this, falls over backward on the stage, having hysterics, and her wildly kicking legs reveal that she's wearing only tiny black panties under her dress, just a kind of G-string. Wooden Eye Belzer already has a siphon in his hand and is directing a sharp stream up between her thighs, and she's squealing like a dozen little pigs whose tails are being pinched. Merkel notices that the ends of his tie are missing. The old man murmurs. Clean-cut raid, I say. And Merkel seizes a half-filled cognac bottle and hurls it into the tie-cutter's stomach, doubling him up. Neat. Perfect throw, the old man says approvingly. And now a piece of the lattice flies through the air. We all duck, except for the old man who sits there unmoved and grinning. The piano gets another swallow of beer. Schnapps makes you impotent, Thomsen stammers. Back to the cat house again? The old man asks me. No, just sleep. At least a couple of hours still. Thomsen laboriously pulls himself to his feet. With you, I'm coming, fucking den of thieves. Let's go. Just one more stop at the waterhole. One last good leak. The white moonlight beyond the swinging door hits me like a blow. I wasn't prepared for light, a glitter of flowing silver. The beach, a blue-white strip in a cold fire of pure radiance, streets, houses, everything bathed in icy, glowing neon light. My God, there's never been a moon like this, round and white like camembert, gleaming camembert. You could read the paper, buy it, with no trouble at all. The whole bay a single sheet of glittering silver foil. The enormous stretch from coast to horizon, a myriad of metallic facets. Silver horizon against velvet black sky. I narrow my eyes. The island beyond is a dark carp speck in the dazzle. The funnel of a sunken transport, the fragment of a mast, all sharp as a knife edge. I prop myself against the low concrete wall, the feel of pumice on the palms of my hands. Disagreeable. The geraniums in the flower boxes, each blossom separate and distinct. Mustard gas bombs are supposed to smell like geraniums. The shadows, the roar of the surf along the beach, I have the groundswell in my head. The gleaming, spangled surface of the moon sea bears me up and down, up and down. A dog barks. The moon is barking. Where is Thomsen, the new knight? Where the hell is Thomsen? Back into the royal again. You could cut the air with a knife. What's become of Thomsen? I kick open the door to the can, careful not to touch the brass knob. There lies Thomsen, stretched out on his right side in a great puddle of urine, a heap of vomit beside his head, blocking the urine in the gutter. On top of the grating over the drain is a second great mess of it. The right side of Thomsen's face is resting in this concoction. His Ritterkreuz dangles in it too. His mouth keeps forming bubbles because he's forcing sounds out. Through the gurgling, I can make out, fight on, victory or death, fight on, victory or death, fight on. Victory or death. In a minute, I'll be vomiting too, rising nausea against the roof of my mouth. "Come on your feet," I say between clenched teeth and seize him by the collar. I don't want that mess on my hands. I wanted to tonight, I wanted to really fuck myself out, Thomsen mutters. Now I am not in the condition to fuck. The old man appears. We take Thomsen by the ankles and wrists. Half dragging, half carrying him, we get him through the door. The right side of his uniform is completely drenched. "Give me a hand with him." I have to let go. I rush back into the can. In one great torrent, the entire contents of my stomach gush out onto the tile floor. Convulsive retching. Tears in my eyes. I prop myself against the tile wall. My left sleeve is pushed up, and I can see the dial of my wristwatch. 2 o'clock. Shit. At 6:30, the old man is coming to drive us to the harbor. This audio cue signals the end of the episode and the transition to the after-action report. Here, like I said, I talk about interesting things in the episode, things that stuck out to me like historical events, food, behavior, anything that warrants a bit of discussion. Having been an officer myself and reading about the shenanigans in this etablissement called Bar Royal, quite a few memories have been revived. And even though there was barely any unauthorized use of firearms during my time, partying hard after working even harder was par for the course. I've told this story before and my regulars already know this, but for all the new viewers, let it be known that once our battalion CO received an angry phone call from some neighbors of the base complaining that, and I quote, "some guys in the officers' club are throwing up too loudly and if they could please take it indoors." End quote. It was 5 or 6 p.m. by the way. So, it's good to see that some things never change. Either way, our author describes the events inside the Bar Royal, which certainly existed, but it's hard to say where precisely. The bar you see in the movie by Wolfgang Petersen was a set and not a real place. What is a real place, however, is the Hotel Majestic, or Majestic, whatever you want to call it. This hotel still exists today in the scenic town of La Baule, west of Saint-Nazaire. Back then, it had been requisitioned by the Tod organization, which was responsible for construction projects, but also, in a small capacity, housed some Wehrmacht personnel in hotels like this. During the hedonistic events, Buchheim recounts the tales of many other U-boat captains, either directly or by proxy. As stated before, his own captain is Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock, who we will talk about in depth later. For now, let's focus on the others. Now, Buchheim altered the names of many captains, but most of the time only slightly. Safe to say, most if not all of them are based on real people. The most tragic probably being the man he calls Mönckeberg, whose fate was sealed when he answered a swim call in the North Atlantic, slipped while jumping off the conning tower and broke his neck when he hit the saddle tank head first. This really happened, in fact, to Captain Rolf Mützelburg of U-203. He died in this way on September 11th, 1942. Others are Captains Kallmann and Bartel. So-called Kallmann, who inquires about the fate of his good friend Bartel early on, is probably based on Captain Erich Topp, one of the most well-known and successful U-boat captains of the war. Bartel most probably refers to Captain Engelbert Endras, whose nickname was Bertel and as such is a close phonetic match. Topp and Endras were both very close friends, so that matches as well. Another man is Captain Truman, the man that holds the impromptu speech about high command, the one that in the movie is conducted by Captain Thomsen. Truman is an amalgam of Captain Karl Thurmann of U-553 and Captain Peter Erich Kremer of U-333. The latter, whose nickname was Ali because he tended to wear a chic costume during festivities, received the double nickname Ali Wreck because he managed to get his boat shot up thoroughly many times, but each time made it back to base, as told in the book. So you see, everything that's being told has a basis in reality, and even though some former members of the Kriegsmarine have claimed that the events in the bar are vastly overblown, I can totally believe it myself, not least because I have partied almost as hard without being subjected to actual wartime threats. So here we go, 3 hours of sleep for our author and then it's off to the races. We'll see what's going to go down in the next episode. Cheers!